I'll have to urge you to say Bharat more often because Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his nameplate has put Bharat. So clearly the intent is to start calling the nation Bharat more than India, and somewhere officially it should start reflecting very, very soon. Pallavi Ghosh and Zaka Jacob should be joining us. Yes, Pallavi. So clearly it's not just the President, it's the Prime Minister, and it all started at the BRICS Summit.
Absolutely, and Anand, the Prime Minister leading by example, making it very clear that it's also going to be called Bharat. India is Bharat and Bharat is India, because if you go by the Constitution, I know it's been mired in a lot of political controversy, but the first time it raised those eyebrows only for the opposition parties is when the President of Bharat invited all the delegates as well as the former Prime Ministers to the banquet which is going to take place later tonight. And I think today the Prime Minister's name plaque right in front of him, even as he was giving his opening address, is a very, very strong messaging. In fact, if you notice, right from the preparations for the G20 Summit to the way the Mandapam has been built, it's called Bharat Mandapam for that matter, putting up Konark in the backdrop of the Prime Minister meeting and greeting and welcoming all the delegates, the Bharatiyata, India's tradition, India's culture, that is what the entire stress has been all about. Unashamed, unapologetic, proud, and this is what we are going to be offering to the world, because Bharatiyata, Bharat means plenty of things. And Konark also depicts that. The inclusivity, the fact that there's continuity, there's going to be change, and we are going to be resilient. And that's the reason why there are two important exhibitions which are part of the Bharat Mandapam. One, of course, is the Corridor of Culture. You must have noticed a red carpet welcome which was being given to the delegates when the Prime Minister was meeting them personally. Through that entire corridor, there were replicas or artifacts of India which were put up. Natraj occupying a prominent place, that was one. And the second, the exhibition on the mother of democracy. We call ourselves that, the mother of democracy. Despite the tug of war, despite the pulls and pressures, we've carried on with our democratic norms. And that's also something which America has spoken about in its statement yesterday, that how democracy needs to thrive. We are surrounded by countries in a neighborhood of facing those challenging times, but India has been steadfast, and that's what Bharatiyata and being Bharat is all about.
Yeah. 2000 years ago, around 300 AD, that's when we had the Vishnu Purana mention the concept of Bharatam from Hindu to Hindu, and it was a clear definition of how Bharatam, this entire country or this entire region would be defined. But clearly, Zaka, it's just about two names which exist, because the G20 logo says G20 Bharat 2023 India. It's just that looks like the government has decided they are going to use one name more than the other, and that's the civilizational name, that is Bharat.
Nameplate that the Prime Minister had, as Pallavi was referring to, the nameplate the PM had just as he was making those opening comments in the first session for One Earth, which said Bharat and not India. In the world of diplomacy, that has a huge significance, because, you know, the UNGA is coming up in the month of September. In the next few days, world leaders will be congregating in New York. And so far, India has gone by, and the UN goes by alphabetical precedence, alphabetical order. So India has always been sort of whereas if you were to go by Bharat, it will be one of the first countries in order of alphabetical precedence, as it were. So I think you're going to increasingly see that. Clearly, the Prime Minister using the nameplate of Bharat is sending out a message internationally, domestically as well, that look, this is the name of this ancient land. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to change the Constitution or amend Article 1.1, but if more and more in official documentation, in gazettes, in papers being put out by the government, the nomenclature is going to be that of Bharat, then I think right from the UN to these other multilateral organizations, you are going to see name plaques for not just Prime Minister but other officials as well. When the External Affairs Minister goes for delegation level visits, or when the Finance Minister goes, other ministers go for delegation level visits, you're going to see more and more the usage of Bharat. So I think that's an emphatic statement, coming as it does, because look, all the world's eyes are on India right now. The whole world is looking at this G20 summit being hosted by India. And the image that goes is the Prime Minister of India with the name plaque in front of him saying Bharat. The second thing, I think, the addition of the African Union, I think that is a hugely important step. You cannot have a continent which has 59 countries being not part of the room or not part of the high table where the biggest decisions, the most consequential decisions are being taken. And I think by doing that, by India being the proposer of that idea to include the African Union as a permanent member of the G20, India is also sending out a signal, not just to the Western and developed world, not just to China and Russia, but also to the developing world, that look, we are the ones who mooted, proposed and saw through the inclusion of a large chunk of the developing world now being represented by the African Union. I wouldn't be surprised if soon enough, I know that Brazil and Argentina are both from Latin America, are part of the G20, but I wouldn't be surprised if the equivalent of the African Union in Latin America also finds place as a permanent member of the G20. So I think India is also trying to drive home that message that India is the voice of the global South. And the third thing, which the Prime Minister said very quickly in his opening comments, where he said, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, it's just that we'll have to start saying Bharat more often now, Zaka. The other thing is, does it now become G21? And the third part, when you talked about UN, so India rises in the pecking order because alphabetically we are Bharat. The other day, the deputy spokesperson of the UN chair had very clearly said that there has been no formal approach from the nation, from Bharat, to try and change the name from India to Bharat. They said that we did consider because Turkey said Turkey and we did approve of it, but so far there has been no approach. But the question to you is there anything, any communication with the UN which says that we need to be called India? Or has it just been a norm, a practice that's been by default followed? That becomes the question. Does India really need to formally approach the UN and say change this name or start calling us Bharat?
So the official name at the United Nations is Republic of India, and that's how all countries, like for example, it's the People's Republic of China. The official name that's given by the respective countries and their governments, that is what the UN recognizes. In the case of the UN, like the deputy spokesperson said, if there is an application from the government of India that they be now referred to as the Republic of Bharat and not the Republic of India, then the UN will make that necessary change. But that is not to say, like I said, that the government of India is planning to bring some kind of constitutional amendment, because as has been made very amply clear, Article 1.1 allows the usage of both. But I think the fact that the Prime Minister used the name plaque of Bharat in front of him is sending out a signal that in multilateral fora, in bilateral fora, and including in forums like the United Nations, I think the preferred usage will be that of Bharat. And as the UN goes by alphabetical chronology, as I've been explaining, you will now see India sort of higher up the order, higher up the alphabetical food chain, as it were, when it comes to speeches of the Prime Minister, speeches of other leaders. So the preference is always, like I said, first for presidents, then Prime Ministers, but it is all in alphabetical order. So it'll be interesting to see at the UNGA, which convenes in the next few days, whether or not preference is given to Bharat or to India. I suspect the Prime Minister was sending out a very clear message with that name plaque saying Bharat as the host member who is leading the effort.
Ahead of